Welcome to the Education Corner podcast. Today our guest is Mr. Dominic Oliver from Lancing College.
It's lovely to have you, Mr. Dominic Oliver from Lancing College, on our Education Corner podcast today, and we're looking forward to hearing more about the school. We know that you're an English specialist historically, particularly Shakespeare, and that you took your MPhil at St Peter's College, Oxford, where you also became a faculty teacher, and you've nearly completed 10 years at Lancing College now as head. How have you seen the school develop and change in that time?
Gosh, in all sorts of ways, and it's lovely to be able to talk to you. There's been a kind of dynamism and growth in a variety of ways, I think. One is in the continued growth of numbers of girls in the school. We're now at just under 45% girls in the school. It's felt properly and fully co-ed for a while. And in fact, the school has celebrated 20 years of being fully co-ed not that long ago. We've actually had girls in the school. We had them in the sixth form since the 1970s. But we've got the largest ever number of girl boarders in the school this year. And we've got very high demand for girls to come and join us. We've adapted and shifted in relation to the external context. We talk a lot to parents and to pupils about the changing world, their changing needs, desires, and so on. So there's been a bit of, I suppose, kind of modernizing and flexing about how the school works. We look terribly traditional. People often say we look like a sort of castle or Hogwarts on the hill, but we're actually kind of more dynamic and outward looking than that. There's been a double build, I think, of co-curricular range and a honing, sharpening, brightening of our academic credentials, which have always been very strong. So at the moment, for example, if I was looking at the co-curricular timetable, you can take 125 different things in a week, or rather you can't, because you can't do it all. We've got bigger. In my time, prep school, we've already had one, but another prep school's joined the family. And we've also got a nursery, which is open 51 weeks of the year. So theoretically, you could be a Lancing College pupil. Pupil might not be quite the right word for someone in nursery, but let's say pupil. Lancing College pupil from 2 months to 18 years. And we may get people who do that. We certainly get people coming all the way through from our preps, although they don't actually dominate the school. They sort of probably about 20 to 25% in any given year group from our preps. So we are currently at about 600 in the college. We're going to get a tiny bit bigger, I think, maybe about 620 in the next year or two. There's sort of a slow evolutionary growth. We're not as big as some schools. You can't slip through the net here. I know the students here. I love the fact that I know them and know them well. But on the other hand, we're big enough because we are this beautiful site where there's almost an acre per pupil of space for everybody. There's been various interesting sort of expansions and developments of our teaching facilities. We've built some sort of, stuff that's sort of not so much the crown, but maybe sort of little jewels in the crown. There's like an equestrian centre, improvements to the swimming pool, lovely things like that. The chapel has just been finished 3 months ago. Started in 1868, so yeah, that's quite
a project.
We're quite proud that that's happened. Pleased that that's happened.
I was there actually just before Christmas, and it's stunning. It really is beautiful.
Yeah, as we move out of at least the current phase of what COVID does, that we're going to have a very, very big celebration in just a few weeks' time of that happening. There's been a change, I think, too, and a proud change in our student makeup. We are very, very proudly diverse, cosmopolitan in the range of where students come from. Just under a third of the students come from overseas, and they don't come from any one place in particular. They come from, I think this year it's 43 different nations, and that's something that students, parents, staff, the whole community like. There's that sense of a very British institution, but one that's informed by a global perspective or set of global perspectives. And, I encounter that because I teach the younger ones debating. I love that. And in that, we're all listening to one another and hearing perspectives from all around the world. And also, we are a more socially inclusive school because a big part of what has happened on my watch and continues to develop is our foundationer program, which is people who are here on transformational bursaries, 110% bursaries, to enable people who wouldn't even begin to dream of the kind of power of somewhere like this to actually be able to come and enjoy that. And that's had a fantastic impact on them individually and on the school more broadly. And I think that's something that's going to continue to grow. So we've got 25 people going through that program right now. We're pushing on to the second phase of that to bring in still more pupils.
How many are you aiming for?
So the next phase will be another 40 students over a period of time. And that's something that we are absolutely committed to investing in. And the community is very much behind that. I think, it's not an inexpensive thing to do, but it's a massively valuable thing to do. And what those students bring to the school, as well as what the school brings to them, is something that really connects very strongly with the foundational principles of the school, that it should be something that's powerful and transforming, because educators, that's what we're up to. We're trying to change young lives, and you change those young lives massively. And then the people around them get to enjoy what they bring to the party as well. One of our foundationers is one of the current heads of school, for example, and that was the case a couple of years ago as well. They go off to fantastic universities, and they are very ambassadorial about the value of education per se, not just to Lancing education. So I think we're excellent, and I'm sure they'll think so again when they come back. So we're powering on, really. It's felt quite exciting and dynamic, and I think more of the same to come.
The foundationers, just going back to that, how are they being found, or how are you selecting them?
So we have partners. We work with a variety of institutions. So that's small scale. Sometimes there are prep schools have started this at a younger age, and then they're looking for continuation places. We look there. And then we also have people who come to us via Royal Springboard, which is the biggest transformational bursary partner organisation in the country. They're very big. We've got a long-standing connection with them. We also connect to the Eastside Young Leaders Academy, and we have some wonderful young men and women who join us from there, from the East End of London. We've got a long-standing links with Holy Trinity School in Lewisham. We also have some rather remarkable young people who look at Lancing, they see it on a website or they drive past, and they self-refer. And actually, there are particular requirements that are needed. There are sort of financial and other things. There's a whole assessment process that people need to go through about the appropriateness to join in that way. But they've been quite remarkable. 2 or 3 people have come that way. Incredible sort of self-starters, and so it's proved as they've come through the school.
That's amazing. I think we've talked about it a bit through what you've mentioned already, but what do you feel is the overall ethos at Lancing College?
I think it's somewhere where people come to enjoy a real community. It's a boarding school where day and flexi pupils gain from all that a boarding school has to offer. That full boarding day, and quite often day students end up staying well into the evening, and we have to say, okay, guys, everyone else is going to bed, so you need to go home to do that. That's not always the case. Some people, they jump on a bus at the beginning and the end of the day, and that's fine. Sometimes they move between those realms. So there's a fantastic musical going to take place next week. We've got Chicago, which I think has got about 150 people in it. They're all here into the evenings at the moment because they're in the final stages of rehearsal. It's international, as I've mentioned. We're preparing young people here to be successful global citizens and to engage with the world. And that ties in, I think, to something that is kind of global, transnational. I don't know how you want to put it exactly. But people leave here, they leave here competitive, they leave here desiring to do interesting things, and that might be to go into business or go into the arts or academic life. There's wonderful traditions here, loads of medics particularly at the moment. But the kind of common thread that underpins that, and one of the things I really love about the place, is that Lancing students are always asking not just what's the interesting thing to do or the profit-making thing to do or whatever it is, great as those are, but what's the right thing to do? So there's a very strong and voiced by the students ethical sense here. And that's there in most schools, I think, but it's something that we really deliberately nurture here and enjoy. So I mentioned those debating lessons that I teach.
Yeah.
That's a big part of that. We want to hear from the students, because that's a really powerful thing that young people have, that that strong sense of justice and trying to find the right thing to do. And it's all too easy for us to get caught up in sort of getting and spending and laying waste our powers. I probably misquoted someone there. But to get caught up in that kind of business of day-to-day living and forget that sense of the ethical. So nurturing that really matters to us. And I think it goes back to our Christian foundations. You know, we do have the biggest school chapel in the world. It is an amazing memorial to the founder, but it's also something that's right at the heart of the school. And whether you're Christian or not, and I don't think any high proportion of the students here are Christian than in any other environment, that strong sense of the spiritual, of the ineffable almost, is there very powerfully for all the students. So even if it's a February cold morning and someone says, I'm not particularly keen on going to chapel this morning, maybe in words less polite than that, I don't know, not to me. If they say that, it's fascinating that the first place they all come back to, and they do come back a lot after they've left, is always the chapel. It's got a very special place in their heart. So I think that kind of underlying spiritual sense is powerful. At the heart of it all has to be about learning and the kind of holistic sense of what learning is. And that's currently being sort of drawn together in a diploma, a Lancing diploma, which is going to be more formally launched in September, which draws together the co-curricular, the service element of school life, and that kind of bright, sharp-honed academic and intellectual cut and thrust, and people taking responsibility for all those elements joining together. I think having been a sort of purely academic person in the first part of my career in Oxford and teaching, wonderful undergraduates, the thing that attracted me out and is wonderful about this place is that I think a true education doesn't have to be, and indeed should not be, narrowly one thing. It shouldn't be all about the brain, and it shouldn't be all about getting outside and doing sport or debating societies, whatever it should be, or theatre or music, wonderful as those things are. It needs to be everything. So when it comes to that kind of learning ethos, one of the things that we're trying to do is encourage people to bring it all together, because our job isn't just to get people great grades. Of course, we need to get them great grades. It's about getting them to go out and to face the world and enjoy the world and encounter it as a good influence in that world. They may not, we may not agree precisely what's good and right and just means ultimately for them and their behavioural choices, not precisely, but the fact that they're asking the question is important, and the fact that we've got a strong ethical sense matters to do that. And part of what ties into that is this big focus we have on independent learning that runs right through the heart of what we do from right in year 9 when they start. And we have this sort of thinking about thinking and learning program, a metacognition program, we call it. And they produce a wonderful project as part of that, really inspiring. And I think they amaze themselves. And I had one person this year who was talking about how the NHS was broken before it started economically and therefore needed sort of X, Y, and Z reform. 3,000-word dissertation. Somebody else was talking about how you might measure sporting excellence. Now, these are completely designed by the students themselves, and they're only 13 and a half, 14, and they're wonderful. And that kind of mutates and gets through when you get to the sixth form. You do a version of that, which is called the Heresy Project, where that independence is manifest in, again, they produce kind of wonderful dissertations or projects that are a whole level up, undergraduate level, basically, with all kinds of wacky ideas. So you take a received wisdom and you turn it on its head. The funniest one last time, as well as the most brilliant one, I thought, was somebody who thought that all the problems in Western Europe could be solved by a return of the French monarchy. It was quite persuasive. But somebody else, there was some really fantastic, powerful stuff about challenges for feminist theory in 2022. And those things are rewarded and celebrated. This is a place where we're hoping to inspire people, and I think we do inspire people to learn in the very broadest sense and to enjoy it in the process. There's a lot of laughter and smiles around the place. Pleasure is really important part of learning, and I think too often, those two things get pulled apart. There's a spring in the collective step, I would say.
And it's good that they're able to express themselves no matter what they're saying. How do you feel parents' needs changed since the pandemic? And do you feel that you've had to take a more global approach, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. The first day of the first lockdown, we had 100% attendance at remote registration. And that included people who were 3 in the morning or people 11 p.m. at night, as well as the kind of core of people who are in the UK. That kind of global sense of the world, that sudden sense of, gosh, we really are strongly and profoundly connected, felt very, very strong and hasn't gone away, actually. So I think one of the things is that parents want to be, and indeed are, more involved in their child's education, their progress, and their sense of well-being and happiness. I think it was a very interestingly exposing time for everybody around the world, seeing just how much of a strain and a stress learning remotely was, and what needed to shift permanently in relation to how we think about people's sort of mental well-being. I mean, I think parents feel, and this I think this is probably across the sector, but we're sort of surveying parents right now, and indicators are quite strongly that parents are concerned about the longer term impacts on mental health as well as progress on the short term. One of the things that's been hugely beneficial and demonstrable is that kind of sense of needing to be more strongly connected, and you can do that through the systems we put in place in the face of the pandemic. Our IT systems more than stood up to it, and in fact we've invested massively in various bits of communication software and so on. But that actually they wanted that, and I completely understand that as a fellow parent, and also the value of being together with other children, learning together, working together, playing sports together, instruments and so on. That's been really, really fascinating. I've never seen such a low rate of children wanting to, no one's pulling a sickie here. Everyone's desperate to be back in the classroom and with one another. And that hasn't really faded away. I thought it might do. People were desperate to get back and then think, okay, and then return to normal. They're really, really keen to be with and amongst one another. They feel the value of it. I think one of the things that's interesting, though, is that we have already, and we're doing more on this, taking a more of a proactive approach to safeguarding against excessive screen time, self-regulation technology, software that people sign up to and say, I want to be doing X, Y, and Z, but not at these hours. So to support and help people in getting off screens a bit. And I was chatting to somebody this morning who says, I know I've said to Oliver that I'd like to have my mobile phone all day during lesson time. And in the younger years, we don't let them have them during lesson time, during the working day. But I know it's good for me not to have it. So I'm glad I'm having the help to learn that when I get to the sixth form, which is when things shift, I'll be able to regulate myself. So all that sort of using software, but also actually just talking to people, interacting with them on managing sort of digital life is really important, because digital life is both a fantastic boon and this awful danger, I suppose, and working out the balance between those two things, really important. Yeah. We've always had PSHE for parents, and that's gone live and online. So people from all around the world can access, for example, stuff about digital safety, particular anxieties or concerns that are occupying. And I think we've seen the benefits of that blended contact. And parents who have, maybe they're in London, or maybe they're just up the road, or maybe they're on the other side of the world. The joys of the new online parent meeting systems, which obviously you supplement with face-to-face as and when you can, mean that absolutely everybody can come to a parent meeting where it might not have been straightforward before. And that's been fantastic.
I think both points that you're making are something that I spoke to Mrs. Jane Lunnan from Allane's yesterday. They've made a decision not to have mobiles during the school day. Obviously, with the older ones, it's slightly different to the younger ones, exactly the same as you're saying. But I think also the fact that through the pandemic that we've all learnt so much, and communication, and so there's kind of the pluses and minuses, isn't there? There's the social media and mobile aspect, and then the fact that we can now attend a parents' meeting from anywhere in the world, or sit in on a talk from your office, or
absolutely. And we had all assemblies and everything like that went online quite swiftly. And I've even managed, on occasion, now we even had a really big Founders Day celebration last year. Parents couldn't come because we're in the middle of complicated COVID things, but we had a TV crew, and we actually had basically a live running throughout the day TV show the parents could watch. We've had the no mobile phones thing here for quite a while, actually. That's been the last 3 or 4 years. And it's a sort of constant bone of contention until it suddenly becomes not one. So for the first 2 or 3 weeks with some of the younger ones, they say, oh, we wish this and that. But then we talk, and on the whole, people realise that it's the right thing for them.
So just thinking for parents considering schools, and obviously Lancing College is a school that we recommend very highly. What's the main point of entry to Lancing, and what steps should they be taking if they're interested in applying?
So year 9 is our primary point of entry. We do have people joining in other years. There's a good chunk of people who come and join us to enrich and grow the school in the 6th form. And sometimes we have places in other years too. That's the primary one. We're currently booking ahead now for our advanced program, so our early testing program for 2025. And our advanced program aims to do what we do in our teaching and learning in an assessment. So it is not just take an ISEB pre-test or a CAT4 test, and on the basis of that score, we'll say yay or nay. Children are not a number, they're not machines, and we don't want to teach people or assess people in that way either. So what we look for, we get people they do take some kind of standardized tests like that, but we also then have people come and spend a day with us. They do a written exercise or 2. They have a couple of interviews, they interact with one another. We look at all of it, we assess all of it. We want to see the child in the round. We want to see children in the round. I want to know what they're interested in. We want to know what they're not interested in, what they like doing, what they'd like to explore doing, and so on. And we get a really good flavour of people that way. And our experiences, when they come, they don't want to go away. So they come for the day and their parents have to sort of drag them out of the school, which when I did some assessments for schools and so on was not at all how it worked. And what that does is well known now across the sector is deliberately a broad picture. And what we're after is children who've got a bit of independent mindedness about them, who are prepared to think for themselves, who are prepared to engage with the ideas and thoughts that we offer them. There is no one side that's, one type of person that is right for Lancing. I wanted a genuinely varied, I've used the word cosmopolitan, I'll use it again, different set of people. I don't want things to be homogenous here. I don't think that's good educationally. We haven't got a pigeonhole we want to drop people into. We don't want lots of preparation, because I don't think that's a good idea either. We're trying to sort of level the field in that way. We're trying to be humane too. It's in line with how we try to function, I think.
Do you look at their maths and English?
We'll have the either ISEB or CAT4 testing, which breaks that down as well. Yeah. And then the assessment portfolio we get people to look at, they normally have to look at a sort of case study of something. It's age appropriate. And then they have to sort of talk about what they think about it. So I'll give you an example. We're thinking of siting a nuclear power station near Lancing, would be one. Hey, here's the case for, here's what some people think would be a terrible idea. Here's somebody who's not sure, but maybe in 5 years' time. Loads and loads of different bits of information. What do you think? And there's some visual stuff, there's some numerical, there's some writing, all age appropriate, all interesting and fun and stimulating, but a good sort of, stimulating stimulus material. We also interview, so there's the maths, the English in those kind of standardized scores, but all of it matters and we weight it accordingly. If somebody's very strong in one area, that might play fine for them, even if they're not quite so strong in another area. It hasn't got to be that you're kind of the alpha candidate across the board. You do need to have some strengths, of course.
And you're, as a school and as a boarding school, you're a popular choice for many parents from abroad. How is the application process for those children who are perhaps not currently based in the UK?
One of the things that's arisen out of the pandemic is that we had to run an entire assessment year online. Yeah. So that gave us a really good way of helping us work out how to do that in parallel. So it is entirely possible to have a parallel assessment program done remotely, and we have a system for doing that. And obviously it's slightly different, but in mode, not in what we're looking for. So, they do sit some tests and assessments, but we just do what we're doing now on our Zoom call as we record the podcast. We sort of look at each other on screen. And that works very effectively. It works very effectively. Ideally, people will then, do make it across and come and see us. But if they can't, then we account for that. We have people from the state sector joining us as well. And of course, they haven't gone through a prep school system. So they haven't been polished in the way that you might get from that. But that doesn't matter. We have some of our most successful students come and join us from the state sector, because the whole thing is designed to be something that levels that playing field, really.
Excellent. How do you build the independent learning thinking into the day-to-day curriculum at Lancing College?
It's built in from the point of admission. We assess on the basis of independent, untutored thought, and that's we think the best way to find open-minded and resilient and interesting people. Then we teach it. I mentioned that Metacog program. We've got that program to do this. So actually everybody then learning about how the brain works, how they learn effectively, how they might want to improve on some ways that they learn. So that's all during their sort of year 9 program, the end of which is that dissertation that they write. The Metacog essay prizes are got a big highlight at the end of the year. And what we are doing, the part of how we're looking at our whole curriculum and part of what we do as a matter of course is to marry our research drive, kind of encourage them to get into research that marries subject specialism and academic expertise with a sort of unified sense of the underlying attributes of learning that tie the whole curriculum together. So that's transportable stuff, really. So it might be that actually I'm teaching or somebody else is teaching about Richard III and how the language pumps and works in that play. And somebody might be doing some research there on how iambic pentameter came to be the dominant mode for that writing period in the drama. Somebody else might be transferring that and looking at something in parallel with Cervantes in Spanish. Somebody else might be looking at what's going on in the art world at that time and so on. So there's an encouragement to take things and run with them, really, and enjoy them, and to have that sense of massive expertise, which our common room, our teaching staff brings. Is incredibly well qualified, incredibly passionate. It's not just about their subjects, but about successful pedagogy, trying to get people to engage with that. So I've just seen, for example, a copy of the latest Lancing Geographer, which is the geography students from all years in the school producing their own journal, basically, of geographical study in the college, and anyone and everyone's able to contribute there, as well as things like, we have got the View from the Hill, it's called, the student-produced newspaper, and stuff like that. That all unites together, really. Learning matters. Independent thinking matters. So you need to take expertise that you're offered and then run with it, play with it, challenge it. And I think the 3 metrics we use for an excellent lesson are that students walk out knowing more than when they walk in, that they're very active in that process, and that they have fun doing it. And the fun element, it sounds sort of, say learning is fun. It sounds sort of trivial and glib. No, I think it means it's successful. I think it means there's a kind of depth to it that people want to come back to what they've been doing. It doesn't work for every lesson, doesn't work for every subject, every time for every student. But the whole mission here is to get people doing that. We do get very interesting teachers here, and we are very lucky that people want to come and work here. I have fantastic lists of applicants for every role that we put up. We're in the national park. We've got accommodation, lots of it, close to one of the most diverse and attractive cities in the UK, in Brighton. So we're only about 5 miles from Brighton. We've got outstanding facilities, kids who want to learn. It's a very exciting place to want to come and sort of bring their families to. People wanting to make it work for themselves as pedagogues as well. The other thing, and I think I've touched on this a little bit, we don't talk about the extracurricular here, we talk about the co-curricular. So the curriculum, co-curriculum interact, learning and chances to think and experience things for themselves don't just stop at the exam curriculum. So they form new societies, just recently, there's massive creativity, not for me, but massive creativity in Dungeons and Dragons society. That's kind of co-creating something, and why not? And that has all different people involved with it. Or we've got people reforming, re-energizing their LGBTQI society in the school, and a good and challenging thing. They plan expeditions. We've got loads of prizes we offer for things for independent learning and other things. loads of outside speakers. Just last night, we had Ed Shawcross come and talk to us about his latest book. Guy who was running the Imperial College vaccine program, he was coming to speak. He came to speak, very recently. We've got a whole line of subsequence of people who come through here and experience that elsewhere too. So people are encouraged to engage outside, including in the workplace.
Leads slightly on to what I was going to ask next. I've visited Lancing several times now, and it's a very vibrant community, and I enjoy my visits immensely. But how are the pupils there expressing? How are they using their voice? How are their views heard? And how do you, as staff, then deal with what you learn or the things that they express?
Yeah. So I love hearing from students. The more, the better, really. I'll give you an example. Just this week, even the catering department, I've got a "you said, we did" display just outside the dining hall. The students have said these things. This is what we've done in response. We've got a green group. We have different year group councils. We have an inclusion and diversity working group with student champions on it. We have an IT committee. We're about to reboot our teaching and learning committee of students who have a passion about how they're taught and what they're learning. There's a school council that I chair. I see the prefects. We have, and they're a great bunch. We have the peer supporters who are trained to an incredibly high level. We've got 50 people in the sixth form who have been trained for about 30 hours in the skills of listening to one another, what they need to bring to their teachers and pastoral carers and so on. There's a whole set of structures, and we're constantly looking for more to hear their voices. And we do ask as well. We ask in surveys, in Living and Learning at Lancing, our annual survey, what are you enjoying? What do we need to change? And so on. And it can be small things. It can be stuff about uniform. We've just changed the uniform code in response to, it's a long sequence of debate and discussion. And it's made sense, trivial things. Do girls really need to have their hair tied up all the time? Well, it really mattered to them. Actually, it just needs to be smart as far as I'm concerned. So, the hair's come down and it's not the big marker between the sixth form and the lower school that it used to be. Small, but mattered to them. Things like pressure for different subject choices and a debate there, that is heard. That is heard, and the curriculum can change. So big strength here, visual arts and photography. Actually, we have a photography separate subject at the moment. It's pre-U. It's about to become A-level again, because that was the right thing to do and came out of student passion. It's a very rigorous and exciting sort of subject of study, and people go off and do very interesting things with it. Student voice is heard. Sometimes it's about kind of politics, ethics, and so on. Sometimes it's about facilities. Sometimes it's about food. It's about the things that teenagers want to talk about, and we respond.
And there's been so many things happen in recent times, but with Black Lives Matter and everything that happened last year, did you feel that significant changes were made in response to that? Or did you feel that the curriculum largely was already set up to address Black history?
Well, I think any educational institution that said they got everything right before that point and after would be lying to itself. So we've just done a full audit of, what are we doing? What have we done? And what kind of needs to shift and what has shifted as a consequence? So there's been a lot of discussion about how the community functions, about what's taught in the curriculum, and that is developing and shifting as we speak, and rightly so. We need to be more self-conscious. And I think I'll put into there stuff about gender, about sustainability and so on.
Yeah.
But a big sustainability week coming. Now, the Sustainability Week is the culmination of a lot of efforts in one sense, but it's also a marker in a journey for the college, not just about our curriculum, but about how we live together and how these beautiful ancient buildings need to be adjusted and how they function and so on. So I think the pressure from external events, be it Black Lives Matter, be what happened around the terrible murder of Sarah Everard and so on. All those things highlighted things that were already there in our minds, were already being addressed, but demonstrated that we've all got work to do. And that's what a school like this, the temptation would be to sort of look back to tradition and look back to how things have always been done. You've got to be looking forward. You've got to be looking at how children are and families are and society is today and into the future, and what our duty is.
And something that I always love asking, because I know that Lancing College does such a brilliant job with the children, just tell me a little bit about how you feel you're preparing the children, not only for their time there, where they're obviously embracing so much and being encouraged to think freely, but also going forwards to cope with when they leave and they go into a world that I think is possibly as competitive as it's ever been and as challenging in many ways as it's ever been. How do you feel you're preparing them for that next step?
So part of this is to do, there are sort of generic programs on offer that we work with, but it ties up with the fact that we know every child and that every child needs different support, different guidance, different stimulus, and a different kind of either push onto the wonderful elastic springboard into the next stage of life. Some of them are going to leap on there and some of them need a bit more of a help to get there. So we know our pupils and we work them in earnest about next steps from year 11. There's other stuff happening before that. So at a time when they're making decisions about A-levels or starting to do that, we do full Moresby careers assessments, which is partly surveys, psychometric testing, but also interviewing and discussion with experts. We coach the individuals who do that. We follow that up over the next 2 years with support to help them make decisions about their future, range from no idea. Some people, when they're 15, 16, have absolutely no idea what they want to do, to those who have a really, really clear idea. And we are very successful in helping all of the above, really. Everyone has their own tutor. In the sixth form, they choose that tutor, and it may well be tied to their particular interests. And often that's focused on a university application, but not always. We have different layers of careers events. So there's kind of getting someone an idea about what going to work in the civil service might be, or in the media, or on the law, or setting up your own business. And then we have just stuff that's kind of careers in depth. We have this fantastic OL network of sort of 10,000 people or so who kind of joined back up with us to come and talk, come and engage. Unlike a lot of other schools that have struggled, we are now engaged in work experience placements with them as well. That's been tricky for a variety of reasons for lots of schools, for lots of places, but we're determined to make that work. And we've got 50 different professional networks of alumni who we link up with. And that kind of trial of the work experience thing, which is really getting going with the year 12 students, is demonstrating to us there's an appetite for people to get involved and help in that way. Now, this comes alongside all the stuff you need to be thinking about resilience, about trying things. And if it doesn't quite work out, that's okay. You keep trying. High and low stakes failures, all that sort of stuff is sort of built into how we function. But we also give some sort of core skills. I think they need some basic stuff to do with how they function in the world financially and running their own personal finances. They go off to students, or maybe be students, or maybe the first years of their working lives. So we actually have a leaving Lancing program at school, which has their cooking, they have professional networking, whether that's on LinkedIn or our own version of it called Lancing Connected, self-defense, finance and budgeting, car maintenance. And they're quite often asked for different things in different years. And pupils have a voice in refining that year on year. We get very, very strong feedback from students and parents about how well we do those elements of preparation in the most sort of basically practical, going beyond beans on toast, actually here's how you cook a good meal, to the big stuff about how we coach people into the best possible places for them. And we're, whether it's Oxbridge or it's design college, we have people going off to the very best things for architecture and design, whether it's in the UK or overseas. We have really fantastic departments and subsets of departments that are entirely geared up to delivering that. School should be, and Lancing is, fun, stimulating, inspiring in and of itself. But our purpose is to prepare the young people for the rest of their lives. And if we're not doing that bit, we're not doing everything right. So it's got to be both of those things together. So the kind of values of the school and that warmth, that kindness, that inspiration that we want them to enjoy and experience here, that needs to come with them as they're prepared for those next steps, university and indeed beyond. I was on a call with 50 different old boys and girls just the other day, massively varied backgrounds, all keen to support one another and to engage with those who are still here and say, well, what can we do to help people get into the world outside Lancing and enjoy that and make a success. It's, there's that sense of community is so strong. There's the power of it when you're here and in it, and the power of it as you go through and out and beyond. So the last headmaster's lecture which is a very exciting, stimulating thing about politics in the United States, that had hundreds and hundreds of people from the UK all around the world in the room and online all around the world. So it was really, every time those things happen, I'm sort of delightfully surprised. Well, not surprised exactly, but, my sense of pleasure in the place and how it functions is re-inscribed very strongly.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to be asking more about a few of the things you've mentioned, particularly your own LinkedIn. But as I say, we are always keen to recommend Lancing College, and we're very grateful, Dominic, for you giving up your time to talk to us and really convey to our listeners the amazing school that it is. Thank you.
And what real pleasure to talk to you. And, we do want to inspire. We want people to be brilliant. We want them to be themselves.
And I think that definitely comes over when you visit. I think that's the key thing now that we're coming through the pandemic, is that people can hopefully now come and visit on the different days and see for themselves.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
Thank you.